Well, I want to welcome you to our program today. We have a very special guest. Our guest is Rusty Boruff, and he is the founder but also the director of a very special and important mission in the Quad Cities called the 180 Zone. And so, Rusty, welcome. Good to have you on our show today.
Great to be here.
Yeah, and so the 180 Zone, and that would be in the Quad Cities. Could you just explain just a little bit about about what 180 Zone? Just the title of that sounds so interesting.
Yeah. We are a faith-based nonprofit organization, and it's based off the idea of people or communities or neighborhoods doing a 180. So that's where we get the 180 Zone at. And there's three things that we do: prevent, reach, and develop. Prevent is where we're working with kids in neighborhoods that maybe aren't the best areas. High poverty, low income, and so we come along the schools in those neighborhoods and help out in any way possible. And we also have reach, where we're reaching into the community, the prisons, the jails, the homeless. And then develop is where we are actually developing people into a relationship with Christ. And that's like our residential homes. So we have men's homes, women's homes, stability and affordable housing. And all of these homes are designed to help men and women who have addictions, coming out of homelessness, incarceration, domestic abuse, sex trafficking victims. So as an organization, there's a lot that we do working with people in all different areas of life.
Yeah, and when we look at the complexities of the problems that our society is having today, you've addressed a lot of these things. I mean, these are a lot of very big issues when you think like drug addiction, abuse, homelessness, poverty, those things. And sometimes we just feel so powerless over these things and what we can do. But 180, I think that's 180 Zone. That's really, an interesting, concept or title, but the ministry to transform, to change. It kind of reminds me of the word repentance. I think, where John the Baptist is saying, repent, for the kingdom of God is at hand. Well, just share a little bit about your life. I mean, what brought you to this point where you are now doing, quite a fabulous ministry, working, with what is very challenging ministry?
The concept of the 180 Zone really came out of my life story, and even though I grew up in a great environment, awesome parents, there were many of addictions that settled in all the way through junior high, high school, ended up homeless as a teenager, and eventually got kicked out of school and found myself sitting in a jail cell, cell 121. And that's where I met Christ, and it was through a man. His name was Merle. He was coming in with the Gideons, and Merle would come in every Sunday. He was in his 90s. He wasn't the most exciting speaker in the world. He would actually fall asleep while we were talking, but it wasn't what he said that made a difference in my life. It's what he did. And so by him walking into that jail cell, it showed me that someone cared about Rusty Boruff, no matter all the mistakes I had made in my life. And it also showed me that God could forgive me and someone believed in me, and that's what I needed. And so when I was in jail, I was there for a year, and that's really where the vision of the 180 Zone came from, because I witnessed a lot of good guys say they want to change their life, but when they got out of jail, they were placed right back in the same circumstances that got them there in the first place. And it's hard to get clean when you're in a mud puddle. And so the vision of the 180 Zone was to create an incubator for life change, a safe place for those men and women to go to when they got out of jail, where they could change their life. And so a couple years out of jail, me and my buddies saved $500 and went and bought a trailer in the Quad Cities and just started housing guys that were getting out of jail, had no clue what we were doing. And eventually, 5 years later, we're able to grow it to where it is today. And God has been very gracious to us. So
isn't that amazing? But like you say, there was a man who came. He was of the Gideons who witnessed to you.
Yeah.
And how the Holy Spirit then brought you to Jesus Christ, that that there was a change in your life, 180, and then that you and a buddy, you say, just bought a mobile home for $500 and you started this ministry.
Yep.
Isn't that something?
It is. It's been an amazing ride, and to watch, like I said, God has been very gracious, and so to watch God maneuver through all of that, you know, even through all of our mistakes. And like I said, we really didn't know what we were doing. We just had a heart to help, you know. And so it's been an amazing journey to watch what God has been able to do. And, you know, our heart is just to serve the community in any way possible.
Rusty, I don't know if this is just kind of what is going through my mind right now, but if there's somebody swimming in shark-infested waters, and you get somebody with a boat that comes and rescues this person out of the shark-infested waters, and then has them on the boat for just a period of time, and then throws them off on the other side of the boat. I mean, they're just kind of right back where they started from.
Yeah.
And so as I'm listening to you, that you see that, I mean, there's steps along this journey. I mean, it's one thing that a person's in jail, but that's not a cure-all.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like if something doesn't happen, well, like you say, pretty soon they're going to be right back to where they started from. I mean, there's got to be this 180 that's taking place in their lives. There's got to be a lot of ministry to support, you know, to allow this change to happen in their lives, and that's a lot of what your ministry and your vision is all about then.
Yeah, and that's why I call it an incubator for life change, because God's the only one that can do that change in people, you know, and what we want to do is create that safe environment for that change to happen, you know, and let God do what he does best, and that's change lives. And sadly, you know, the idea of, you know, American charity is just to throw money at it and expect that it's all going to work out, you know, or throw them into a jail or a prison and expect that they're magically going to get better. Sadly, that doesn't happen, you know. And so as an organization, you know, we take anywhere between, on average, 60 to 65 applications to get into our program every week. And so out of those people, as an organization, we're looking for those who really want to change their life. And so many of the people that end up in our program, they come to us from Nebraska, you know, or New York, all over the country, because they know that we aren't just placing them, you know, we aren't just throwing them right back into that shark-infested water, you know, as you said. We're creating that safe environment to you know, for that life change to happen. And you're exactly right, and that's our goal as an organization, is to create that safe environment and to build relationships with them that are going to be lasting relationships. You know, when they get out of our program, you know, they're plugged into a local church, they have a job, they have a savings account, you know, they've learned life skills, they have a relationship with Christ. And so it's not just throwing them back in, but it's giving them the tools to, you know, to build their own boat, you know. So
yeah, so let's just take, you know, you look at like drug addiction, okay, somebody who is, you know, dealing with drug addiction, and so, you know, there's got to be a willingness to want to change from that. And, you know, I imagine there's a number of things that bring a person to that point. But what are some of the big challenges for somebody like this? Let's say, you know, just chemical addiction in general, alcohol, drugs, you know, to be able to change from that. What are some of the big struggles? You know, here again, maybe it's not just a cookie cutter thing, but what are some of the big challenges that somebody who wants to change are facing today?
You know, one of the biggest things is just society in general. You know, alcohol is so easily accessible. Drugs are so easily acceptable. All forms of addiction these days are so easily acceptable. They're at our fingertips. Gambling, you know, we can sit on our computer and we can do it right from home now. And so the idea that addiction is so accessible, that it's at our fingertips, has really it's kept people from overcoming those addictions. And so one of the things that people tell all the time is you have to change your playground, your playmates, you know, and you have to get out of those situations. You know, if I'm an alcoholic, I can't be going to the parties, I can't be going to the nightclubs, I can't be going to the bars. I have to get myself out of those situations. I have to change some of my friends. But as a church, as Christians, we often fail to replace those old friends and those old playgrounds with new friends and new playgrounds. And so, you know, we tell people, you know, when they come into our program, we delete all their old phone numbers, you know, but what we have to do as Christians and as the church is to replace those with good phone numbers. You know, I need men who can come by and disciple some of our other men on how to do life. So when they're struggling, when they, you know, have that yearning to, you know, pick up that bottle or go to the convenience store and get a 6-pack, that they have a number that they can call and they can say, hey, Rusty, I'm struggling. You know, I'm about ready to walk in this store. You know, and that's the missing link. You know, many people take those steps. They get out, they get themselves out of those playgrounds, play areas, playmates. They get out of all that stuff, but they don't replace it with good friends. They don't replace it with good environments. And so I think that's one of the missing keys that we have in our society is people who will come alongside those who are struggling in life and to say, hey, let me do this with you. You don't have to do it alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's one of the things then is being able to get a network of support and good friends. And so that's, and then how about like domestic abuse? I mean, that obviously is such a serious thing.
Yeah.
And so you have a place for people who are struggling with that as well.
Yeah, many of our women are coming to us, and they're coming out of domestic abuse situations. They're coming to us out of sex trafficking situations. And so our women's facility is 100% secured. Only our staff and very few volunteers know, you know, the address of those places, because oftentimes the drama that they've had is so much that there are many other people involved, you know, whether that be the male that was in the domestic abuse or sex trafficking victim, or the pimp, you know, who's prostitute that he invested thousands of dollars into is now taken out of that lifestyle and placed in a secure place. And so we have to be very careful how we handle those such situations. And once again, for those women, it's really changing their environment, you know, changing, you know, the stores that they used to go to, changing, you know, their neighborhood circles they used to be part of, changing, once again, the area of places they would hang out at. And so it is a lifestyle change, you know, and the men and women who come into our program, they're there for a year plus of their life. It's a very structured organization, very structured program, and so they have to take a big step in changing some of those things around them.
Yeah, so that's, you know, one of the things is that it's not like people can just stay there indefinitely, but yet they can stay there for as long, you know, a time to hopefully get, you know, the rehabilitation, things that they need to be working out in their lives, get to a place where they feel that confidence then.
Yeah, yep. It's a year program, and that's what we found out that works. You know, we tried 6-month programs, 9-month programs. We found a year minimum is what the average person needs to change some of those habits, to, you know, put those good people into their phone, you know, to build those relationships, get plugged into a church. And so after that year, once they graduate our program, usually about month 14, 15, they can go to our stability and affordable housing. You know, it's tough. You know, as a felon, you know, when I got married to, you know, my perfect wife, nearly, you know, we couldn't find an apartment because of my criminal background. You know, and this is 7 years later, and so that is a huge, you know, these people, they change their life, they're doing great, but then they get shot down because they can't find an apartment because of something they did a couple years ago. And so as an organization, we have stability and affordable housing, which is basically just the next step for them. You know, it's the next place for them to go, where it's affordable, it's nice, and they can come in even if they have past evictions or a criminal background.
Well, that's really impressive. I mean, you say you started with the one mobile home, but this sounds like now it's, you know, quite a complex system that you have here. I mean, how many facilities, buildings do you have? Yeah,
we have 4 facilities that house between 40 and 50 people total. And so our facilities are very, they're not institutional. When you come to our place, it is designed to be just a regular home in a regular neighborhood. So you wouldn't even notice that we're there. There's no big signs. There's no, you know, gates, there's no bunk beds, anything like that. We want it to be a neighborly, family environment, you know, and so we strive and work hard at that. We also do a lot with our kids, you know. It's the idea of, I don't want to wait till someone's, you know, 19 and sitting in a jail cell to go visit them and get them in a program. If I can reach that kid when he's in 2nd or 3rd grade, then that's even better. And so we also partner with our school system and many other people to invest into lives of hundreds of kids every week who are living in areas where crime rate is up, poverty is high, education is low, you know. And so what we try to do is to partner with those schools, those families, those neighborhoods, and to invest in them as much as possible.
Yeah, so so prevention, you know, is always the best thing, isn't it? Is if we can somehow be able to reach people before this happens, and we know that there's, you know, no ideal situation, or this, but sometimes in these neighborhoods there's a greater chance that they could fall into these patterns and traps and things like that. And so you really have quite a ministry then of going into these neighborhoods. And so how do you go about that? I mean, do you just kind of knock on somebody's door and say, you got kids, we would like to help them out?
It's a partnership with the school system, and so everything is school-based, you know. And it's the idea of, you know, in these neighborhoods, it all started when a principal told me he has 500 kids in his elementary school, and he said, over half my kids will go home on the weekend and not eat an actual meal. And so when he told us that, we said, as the church, as volunteers, as Christians, what can we do? And so we started Saturday morning. Everything we do focuses around Saturday morning. Saturday mornings, we'll see 100+ people there. We do a hot meal. We have food pantries in the school. We have different lessons. We have worship, memory verses. We have Quest for Christ, which are clubs that meet in 6 different elementary schools. We see a couple hundred kids each week through these clubs, and we're teaching them, you know, Bible lessons, memory verses. And this is really the only church that these kids are introduced to. You know, it's the only Jesus that they see. Other things are like baseball teams. Kids don't, in West Davenport where we focus, the kids, you know, when you're 7, 8 years old, they don't play baseball. You know, when I grew up, that's just what you do as a young kid. You play baseball, you're in Little League. Well, many of these kids don't play because of lack of parent involvement, the cost to it, the travel to it, transportation. And so we have baseball teams, you know, where we actually get to coach these kids and to take them to games, take them to tournaments. It's free to the parents. And once again, it's just to build a relationship with them where we can introduce them to Jesus and also serve them in some capacity.
You mentioned something about, what do you call it, Quest?
Yeah, Quest for Christ, yep.
Quest for Christ.
Yep, and it's a very unique opportunity to meet in the public schools. Like I said, 6 schools, where we actually, on Friday morning, there's hundreds of kids that gather together, and for 45 minutes before school, they have games, they have fellowship, they have a treat and snack, we do worship, and then we have a short lesson. And it's a very unique and awesome opportunity to reach some of these kids. Well,
that's really quite an amazing ministry that you have going there.
Thank you.
And so as we think about this, as you're looking at ministering to hundreds of kids and also people who are coming out of dealing with addictions and with abusive situations, I mean, even like getting out of sex trafficking, you know, let's just talk about that for a minute. You know, I've been hearing so much about that. I mean, this is a worldwide problem now. Sex trafficking. Could you define just exactly, if somebody would say, well, sex trafficking, I hear that word being used a lot, and I hear it in the news once in a while. What exactly is that?
Yeah. Well, most people, when you hear sex trafficking, you think of, you know, a girl in Indonesia, you know, or something like that. But sex trafficking is a very real crime, especially here, you know, in the Midwest, you know, especially coming, you know, Chicago, St. Louis, anywhere between those areas, Des Moines. I-80 is a very trafficked place. And so there's a few forms of it. One is you have to look at the prostitution in the community. Now, most people, when they look at a prostitute who is, say, 32 years old, they see prostitute. What they don't see is that girl, when she was 14, 15, 16, got into prostitution and and 15, 20 years down the road, she's just now trying to get out of prostitution. That is sex trafficking, because she got involved in prostitution when she was 14 or 15, 16, and the reason why she did was because she, the only way to feed herself, only way to survive on the streets. Families who are homeless, a lot of their kids, we had it, and it's not just girls. We had a guy in our program who got into sex trafficking when he was 14 years old. His grandma would pimp him out to her friends. That is sex trafficking. So that's one form, is to look at the prostitution. Many prostitutes didn't just wake up someday and say, hey, I'm going to be a prostitute at age 28. They got involved when they were as a teenager in order to survive, or they were coerced by somebody. The other form is a lot of what we see, online, and that's through very easily accessible websites, that I won't name, but that you can easily go on to, and you can see the picture of the girls, you can see the description, and here's a number to call. Many of those people are under 18, and that is considered sex trafficking. Many of them are over 18, and it is also considered sex trafficking if they are being coerced to do it, if they are doing it because someone is giving them drugs in return, that's sex trafficking. Or if they're doing it for survival, which many of them have. And many of them are from the Quad Cities area, and Dubuque, and Chicago, Rockford. Those areas are prime for sex trafficking because we don't think that it happens here. And so that's where it does happen.
Yeah, so as we look at this ministry, which has a lot of different dimensions to it. And we're so thankful for this ministry because these are tough situations, and a lot of times we just feel like, well, where is there help for somebody who's really so strong and that's so struggling with addiction or who's trying to break out of prostitution? And so I'm just so thankful for a ministry like yours. But obviously, I would think that it would take a lot of volunteers to be doing work like this when you're talking about hundreds of kids and people who are breaking out of prostitution or drug addiction or abuse. And so I would think that you'd need a lot of, how many volunteers do you really need to have this whole thing operate?
That's a great question, and we use on a monthly average about 250 volunteers. So that's a lot of people. That includes people that are in our office, that includes people that are answering all the phone calls, mentors, people who are teaching our men and women, coming alongside them like we talked about, doing life with them. It includes teachers. So we have businesses called Eastgate Industries, and these businesses are designed to employ our residents. So we employ the residents while they're in our program, and so that takes volunteers, developing these businesses, teaching them the skills and trades that they need, and also working in, going to the jails, the prisons, working with the schools. We have 6 different food pantries, being at those food pantries, serving the food. But once again, I always tell our volunteers, it goes beyond serving food, it goes beyond going into a jail, it goes beyond teaching, it goes beyond all of that. Our goal is not to give out food or clothing. Our goal is to build a relationship with that person and introduce them to Jesus. Relationship building is the main, because that's what people are really needing. And so as you look at volunteers, you're looking at relationship building, but then when you look at volunteering, there's so many different things like preparing meals to visiting people in prison, but then also teaching some of them, maybe would need some skill as far as, having some counseling of people who understand, some of the steps to get out of these program or out of these problems. But then also you mentioned like helping a lot of these people develop a skill, because that's part of it. Like we talked about the sharks. Well, part of not going off the back into these sharks is that you've got a skill now where you can build your life. You can now, have a job where you have where you're contributing something to society, but also you got an income now. And so you got all different levels of volunteering in different ways. That employment's very difficult, and so by helping them, employ them. You know, we're teaching them those skills and trades. Our women, they make hand-poured, handcrafted candles that were designed by the Iowa State Ag Department specifically for us. And so we have a huge candle shop, and they're actually making these and packaging them and selling them. And so they learn about marketing, they learn about, you know, packaging, they learn about, you know, the actual manufacturing candles. Our guys, they do windows and siding, and so there's many forms of teaching them skills and trades so that they can be successful out there.
Yeah, so a lot of different, yeah, you mentioned windows and candle making, and so you're learning a certain trade then.
Yep.
Well, one other thing I should mention is that Matthew West is a very popular singer, Christian contemporary singer. He's written a lot of songs. You know, we hear a lot of his songs on Christian radio being sung, and he wrote a song about you.
He did, yes.
What's it called?
It's called We Are the Broken.
We Are the Broken.
Yep.
I think that's a very popular
Yep.
song on Christian
It
radio
is.
right now.
It is.
And it's a song about you, isn't it?
Yep.
How did you meet him, or how did he get to know you?
What he does is he writes songs about people's lives, and he had heard about my story, and so one day I got a phone call, and he said, "Hey, Rusty, this is Matthew West," and I'm like, you know, I'm trying to think of like high school guys I went to school with called Matthew West. I never thought he'd call me. And he said, "Hey, heard about your story and wrote a song about it called We Are the Broken." And so, you know, I've got to know Matthew over the last 2 years. It was on his Into the Light CD, which was his previous CD, right before the one that just came out. And I've had the opportunity to go on tour with him, spend a lot of time with him. We take all of our residents, anytime he comes to a concert close to the Quad Cities area, we're taking our residents there. And so that has been an amazing experience, and it's really became an anthem, you know, and the concept is, even though we all have broken moments in our life, if we're being honest, there's broken moments. Mine was a jail cell, you know, and addiction and homelessness. For others, it might be unforgiveness or abuse. And so that's that story, that we can take those broken moments and use them for good.
Well, I'll tell you, just what he just said. Rusty Boruff, how the Lord can take a person and use a person and now be such a blessing to so many people who are struggling right now. And you too can be part of this very important ministry, the 180 Zone. We have information up on the screen as far as how you can get connected with Rusty in his very good ministry, whether it's going to volunteer or whether it's supporting them financially. Well, God bless you, Rusty. Thanks so much for being on our program today, and
Great to be
God
here.
bless all of you this day as well.